We like to believe that humans are uniquely violent, that there is something fundamentally wrong with us. We look at wars, genocides, mass shootings, and cruelty recorded in history, and we tell ourselves a story where humans are the villains of nature. The most dangerous species ever to exist. Smarter than animals, but far more destructive. It feels obvious, after all. No other species builds weapons capable of destroying the planet. No other species writes books about its own atrocities. No other animal seems so willing to harm members of its own kind. So the conclusion feels simple. Humans must be more violent than nature itself. But what if that conclusion is based on a mistake? What if the problem isn't that humans are unusually violent, but that we are measuring violence in the wrong way? Because when we say violent, we usually imagine explosions, bloodshed, and chaos. We imagine intention. We imagine cruelty. We imagine choice. But nature doesn't look violent in the same way because nature doesn't leave records, it doesn't write history. It doesn't broadcast its behavior. And that creates an illusion where human violence feels exceptional, while natural violence fades into the background. Unnoticed, normalized, or romanticized, we talk about the beauty of the wild, the balance of ecosystems, the harmony of nature. But beneath that surface, something far less comforting is constantly happening. To understand whether humans are truly more violent than nature, we first have to ask a more uncomfortable question. Compared to what? Compared to predators that kill every day? Compared to species that wipe out their rivals completely? Compared to animals that eliminate their own offspring when resources are scarce? Because once you stop judging violence by stories and start judging it by behavior, the picture begins to shift. And the closer you look, the harder it becomes to maintain the idea that humans are the exception. In fact, to see what violence really looks like without morality, without justification, and without excuses, we need to look at a species disturbingly similar to us. A species that shares our social structures, our intelligence, and our instincts. And once you see what they do to each other, the question changes completely. Nature is not peaceful, it is efficient. In the wild, violence is not an exception, it is a tool. A constant process that decides who eats, who reproduces, and who disappears. Predators don't kill because they are angry, they kill because it works. And prey don't die because the system failed. They die because the system is functioning exactly as intended. Many species kill members of their own kind. Lions routinely kill the cubs of rival males to force females back into reproduction. Rodents eliminate weaker offspring when resources are limited. Birds push their siblings out of the nest to improve their own chances of survival. None of this is rare, none of it is accidental. Even cooperation in nature is conditional. When the balance shifts, when food becomes scarce or territory is threatened, alliances collapse instantly. Violence fills the gap, but this kind of violence feels invisible to us because it doesn't come with speeches or symbols. There are no flags, no manifestos, no moral arguments, just behavior, repeating itself over millions of years. And this is where humans feel different. We don't just kill, we justify, we remember. We build narratives around our actions. We turn violence into identity. That makes it louder, more disturbing, and easier to judge. But louder does not mean more frequent, and disturbing does not mean unnatural. If violence were measured the way nature measures it, not by headlines or body counts, but by proportion and persistence, the story would already look less clear. And yet there is one comparison that makes people deeply uncomfortable, because it removes distance, it removes metaphor. It removes the comforting idea that we would never do that. To see it, you have to look at a species that lives in social groups. A species that forms alliances, defends territory, recognizes individuals, and remembers past conflicts. A species that plans. Because when violence emerges from planning instead of instinct alone, the mirror becomes impossible to ignore. And that is exactly what was observed in the forests of Tanzania in the 1970s. What happened there didn't involve humans. There were no weapons, no governments, no ideology. But what unfolded followed a pattern so familiar. It forces a different question. Not whether humans are violent, but whether we ever stopped being animals at all. In the early 1970s, researchers observed a community of chimpanzees living in Gombe National Park. For years, this group lived together without anything that looked like war. They groomed each other. They shared food. They formed alliances. From the outside, they looked peaceful, social, familiar. Then the group split. What followed over the next several years was not chaos. It was not random aggression. It was something far more unsettling. The chimpanzees formed two factions, and the larger group began to systematically hunt the smaller one. They didn't attack openly. They didn't rush in blindly. They moved quietly. They isolated individuals. They waited until a rival was alone, then attacked with overwhelming force. One by one, they eliminated them. This was not self-defense. This was not a fight over food in the moment. This was coordinated, repeated, strategic violence. And when the smaller group was finally destroyed, the territory was absorbed. Resources increased, the attackers benefited. From an evolutionary perspective, it worked. What makes this disturbing isn't that chimpanzees can be violent. It's how similar the pattern is. Coalition building, dehumanization of the outsider. Silence before the attack. Total elimination of the rival group. There were no leaders giving speeches, no symbols, no ideologies. And yet the structure is instantly recognizable. This is where the idea that humans are uniquely violent begins to fall apart. Because the core behavior existed long before cities, laws, or weapons. Violence didn't appear when humans became intelligent. Intelligence simply gave violence better tools. Chimpanzees don't build bombs. They don't keep records. They don't scale their actions across continents. But when given the opportunity, they do something chillingly familiar. They eliminate competitors when the cost is low and the reward is high. And this leads to an uncomfortable realization. What we often call human evil may not be a moral failure at all. It may be an ancient strategy expressed through modern systems. The instinct to protect us and destroy them did not evolve in a courtroom or a parliament. It evolved in small groups where hesitation meant extinction. And that instinct did not disappear when we became civilized. It went underground. It hides inside nations, inside ideologies, inside teams, parties, and identities. It activates whenever we divide the world into allies and enemies. So when humans commit violence on a massive scale, the shocking part isn't that it happens. The shocking part is how familiar the logic is. We are not inventing something new. We are reenacting something very old, with better coordination and more efficient tools. And once you see that, the question shifts again. If humans aren't more violent than nature, if we are simply more capable, then what actually separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom? Because the answer is not kindness, and it is not intelligence. It is something far more dangerous. The difference between humans and other animals is not violence. It is scale. A wolf can kill, a lion can kill, a chimpanzee can organize and kill. But their reach ends where their bodies end. Their violence is limited by muscle, proximity, and time. Humans removed those limits. We learned how to store memory outside the brain. We wrote stories. We recorded grievances. We passed down fear and resentment across generations. An animal forgets its enemy when the threat is gone. Humans teach their children who to hate long after the danger has disappeared. We also learned how to multiply force. A single human is weak. A coordinated group is not. Technology allowed one individual to affect thousands, then millions, without ever seeing the consequences directly. Distance dissolved empathy. Scale diluted responsibility. This is why human violence feels different, not because it comes from a darker place, but because it travels farther than our instincts were designed to comprehend. Our brains evolved in small groups, where every action had immediate feedback. You saw who you hurt. You saw who you lost. You lived with the consequences. Modern systems remove that feedback. Decisions made in one room ripple outward into lives you will never meet. And when consequences become invisible, instincts become dangerous. Nature does not moralize violence. It doesn't call it good or evil. It only selects what survives. Humans added meaning to violence. We wrapped it in language, ideology, and purpose. That didn't create violence, it justified it. This is why history feels heavier than nature. Not because more violence exists, but because humans carry it forward. We archive it, we revisit it, we let it shape identity. Animals fight and move on. Humans fight and remember. So when we ask whether humans are more violent than nature, the honest answer is uncomfortable. We are not more violent by instinct. We are more violent by amplification. We took ancient survival behaviors and plugged them into systems that never shut off. Governments, economies, armies, digital networks. The instinct stayed the same. The environment changed completely. This is the same mismatch that fuels anxiety, tribalism, and constant tension in modern life. A brain built for immediacy now operates inside abstractions, and abstractions don't bleed, scream, or die in front of us. That distance changes everything. Which leads to the final question. If violence is not uniquely human, if nature has always operated this way, then what is our responsibility now that we understand the machine we are running? Because awareness does not remove instinct, but it does remove innocence. Understanding this doesn't excuse violence, it doesn't justify cruelty, and it doesn't mean humans are doomed to repeat the same patterns forever, but it does explain something critical. We are not broken, we are not corrupted, and we are not uniquely evil. We are running ancient instincts inside systems. Those instincts were never meant to control. Violence in its raw form is older than morality, older than language, older than civilization itself. Nature doesn't ask whether something is right or wrong, it only tests whether it works. Humans inherited that logic. What changed was our ability to scale it, remember it, and rationalize it. That is the real danger. Not the instinct, but the story we tell ourselves about it. When we believe violence comes from monsters, we stop looking for it in ourselves. When we imagine nature as peaceful and humans as an anomaly, we miss the continuity between them. And when we deny our animal past, we lose the ability to manage it. Awareness doesn't erase instinct, but it gives us a choice our ancestors never had. The choice to pause, to question, to recognize when ancient survival software is misfiring in a modern world. We are not angels who fell. We are animals who rose. And the future of our species depends on whether we can accept that truth without flinching. Because violence is not the only instinct we inherited. Tribal loyalty, us versus them, identity before reason. These forces shape nations, politics, and everyday interactions far more than we like to admit. So the real question isn't whether humans are more violent than nature. The real question is this: what happens when a deeply tribal animal gains the power to organize the entire planet into opposing groups? That's what we'll explore next.